Now, this is where the analogy with music has to change, because we are dealing not with pleasant and exciting or disturbing, combinations of sounds. We are talking, or, the poetry that goes with them and stuff like that. We are talking about the creation of fiction, small f fiction, right? I'm not saying it's great literature. Small, just the fictional events that go, from here to there. So what do people do if you are getting together to make fiction for fun in a group? And what's interesting is that we can't really see, I was talking to Maciek about this in our second discussion, which he hasn't put up yet. So I'll try not to just repeat myself. What I am saying is that tabletop role-playing is rather remarkable in this regard, because we don't otherwise find social leisure production of fiction. And therefore, I do think the medium is kind of special, right? This is not just fanfic. We don't just get together because we're fans of anime and this is just our weird way of being anime fans or horror fans or science fiction fans. No, this is its own medium. And so when we get together, when people make fictional content together like this, what sort of observable, and this is very important, not deep, internal, secret, hidden. This is not psychology. I am not talking about what I think is, back there in their intentions. I spit upon intentions. I do not care. And all discussion of them. I am much more interested in what I actually see as the dynamic, communicative enjoyment at the table. And that's what I see. You can see it. And so you can participate in it. Because when you get together with some activity like that, it's not just that you want to get there and do it and there happen to be other people there. You want the other people to be doing it too. And your contributions inform them and their contributions inform you. So when I see purposes of play, okay, first of all, I will say that I will take it now after 25 years of diligently observing. So I could be wrong because I'm just me and I don't have data tables or anything, okay? But this is what I think. Is that once you have a medium of play in operation in the way that we describe, you will see the purpose happening. And it doesn't have to be agreed upon. It doesn't have to be negotiated. It doesn't have to be, processed. You don't need to have a deep, discussion of your purpose. When people get together to, play football casually for fun, on a Saturday, with the people in the neighborhood who feel like coming to the park each Saturday. Do they have to have a big encounter session about how, this is about winning? So you understand one side here is going to lose. Okay, is everybody good with this? And have a big, discussion about it? Do they have to have that discussion? No, they don't. So you don't have to have discussions about purposes of play. And so the important, not if the medium gets rolling and we continue and we operate with each other. If a person doesn't like what is the evident purpose of the play among everybody else, then they will stop participating, period. Not because they're necessarily even unhappy. They say, oh, okay, we're not here for this reason that I like. So therefore, what do I see with role-playing when it comes to these purposes? I only see two. I've only ever seen two. Now, they're very broad. So the versions of each one are very, very large. Very wide. Lots of versions. But one of them is easy to understand. If we're making fiction, then people put a little attention into the content that we enjoy in fiction. And by content, I mean the way things turn out and the way things rise and the way things come into conflict. And that's not very hard to understand at all. They start playing their characters in a motivated fashion, or they start, having things occur that collide, or they start developing the richness of the material which allows other people to incorporate it with more power, stuff like that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not very hard to understand. And I submit that Apocalypse World, played in the way that you're describing, has a tendency to do that. It facilitates people entering into that purpose rather well. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't mean that you have specific techniques like authority distributions that make that purpose happen. In fact, to the contrary,
Mm-hmm.
system matters very greatly, but not in that very simplistic idea, right? Oh, well, we don't use dice. We must be doing this for this reason. That's
Mm-hmm.
bullshit, complete bullshit. So, and that's one of the reasons why my writings caused difficulty, because people read them as soon as I talked about purposes of play. They thought I meant families of techniques,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't. So the other big purpose is also incredibly easy to understand, and I hinted at it a moment ago, which is that you enter into the enjoyable confrontations among the real people or about the real people that we
Mm-hmm.
associate with something like competitive card play, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
the kind of uh, competition is too limited a term. Shall we
Mm-hmm.
say confrontation that really puts you, in English, on your game?
Okay.
And so you could be, for example, all the players in a game like that, in a game experience like that, could be teamed up against, adversarial threats. Or they could be each, everybody all against all, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they could be um, all to everybody at the table is operating against some more or less automated feature, right? That will get them all if they don't know. So there is no, you know, person to person, but you're all up against some mechanism, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
causing trouble. So don't get me wrong, because you can have multiple confrontations in the fiction in the first purpose too, right? You could have characters who are all against all, and for the first purpose, that's okay.
Okay. Can
So,
you
but
please repeat the first purpose?
yeah, the
Because I'm
first
trying
purpose
to
is
get.
the first purpose is very much along the lines of we get satisfaction out of creating something, or in the process, successfully or unsuccessfully. That's important.
Mm-hmm.
Successfully or
Okay.
unsuccessfully, we have the dynamics of fiction in play that are enjoyable stories, which is a terrible word to use because we are not making a story in the sense of a theater or a film production
Mm-hmm.
where you have the story and now you just have to make it happen. I'm talking
Mm-hmm.
about, and people do this without even thinking about it or knowing it. In fact, you say, hey, you guys made a great story. And like, oh, we don't make stories. We were just playing our characters. What the fuck
Mm-hmm.
do you think stories are? Right? Of course. I mean, what else would you think? I do not want to get into the disgusting swamp of the idea that story and role playing means somebody pushing people around.
Sure.
Okay, let's not fall into that trap, because most role
Mm-hmm.
players, when they hear the word story, that's all they can think about. And I'm not talking
Mm-hmm.
about it. So I'm talking about the activity of playing characters in crises and problems in which we enjoy some aspect of being people. Even if
Mm-hmm.
it's terribly tragic, that's one way to enjoy it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really hard to understand, but it's also quite remarkable that we are not doing it for an audience or for any third party. That's
Mm-hmm.
where the analogy with music is very powerful. We are doing it and we are hearing it. That's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And as I say, I don't think you can find that in any other way. Tabletop role playing does that. Okay. So that's one purpose that you will see.
Okay.
And you won't see like specific, yeah, okay, so many things I could just want to kill when I think about telling people about this. The next thing that somebody watching this is going to say is, oh, yeah, that's right. When I act against my character for the sake of the story, when I override a die roll for the sake of the story. And I'm like, no, that's where you killed it. That's where you ruined it.
Okay.
That's not how you do what I'm talking about. That's how you destroy what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Remember, we are talking about using the procedures of play with their constraints as the medium.
Mm-hmm.
We can't, if you ruin that, you can't talk about what the painting is if you just ripped all the canvas off the easel and threw it in the street. You can't talk about how well this thing works if all you did was just blow it up. So we need to be talking about people who are enjoying the medium and its mechanisms for what they do and the constraints that they introduce.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have that going on. Then you can say, now, how are they enjoying themselves? What is it that they are happy about doing? And if they are happy in very much in the sense of what kinds of situations created, and I hate to use these words from basic literature class.
Mm-hmm.
Were there conflicts and themes, and were they not contrived? Were they not bullshit?
Mm-hmm.
Right? To some extent. Like I say,
Mm-hmm.
unsuccessfully can happen. You're not always, great at this, but we at least enjoyed trying. So that's one. And it's what I called in my essays story now.
Mm-hmm.
The other, playing on purpose. You see, purposes of play is almost a little too intentional. In English,
Okay.
playing on purpose, that particular construction, is a very useful concept. It means, regardless of whether you knew it or not, this is what you came to do.
Okay.
Right? This is what you're getting out of it. This is what we see you enjoying. This is what we actually can observe you doing. The other one, which is actually also just as ordinary a human activity and experience, which is to say, let's put ourselves to the test in some way. And
Mm-hmm.
whether winning is involved is a good question, but I know loss is involved. Right? You can
Mm-hmm.
have a losing condition and call it a successful game experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because without the chance of that, you wouldn't be here. Not for this purpose, you wouldn't. So I see groups with a given system going one or the other when they are happily and effortlessly, enjoying how we do this, which may involve learning curves too. You try another system and you have to go through a learning curve, but you know that, so it's not stressful. So
Mm-hmm.
things like that are occurring. So do you understand that authorities has nothing to do with purpose? Authorities is like part of that mechanism of the medium, right?
Yeah.
Right? So that we're just taking all that as given, however the mechanisms work. Now,
Mm-hmm.
does that mean that specific mechanisms are only suited for a given purpose? No, not one to one, but the system as a whole with all of its moving parts, you will find that groups will either pick a system that's very good toward that purpose, or they will tweak the system they've got until it's good for that purpose. So um, I regard that as long as people aren't kind of blinded by certain misconceptions, that Apocalypse World is reasonably good for facilitating that first purpose. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, and so that's why system matters, is because you can't, that's why I don't say system is everything, right? It's all system does everything. I've never said that. I am saying that when we consider the purposes of play, why we play, what we enjoy about play, what we get out of play, that you will see that the systems are non-neutral. The system used at the table is not neutral. And that when you publish or present a set of written text, which you are hoping people will use as their rules at the table,
Mm-hmm.
it is rather shocking how bad they are at facilitating a given purpose historically. Most of the
Mm-hmm.
history of writing role playing games actually scrubs out awareness of this issue from its own text. And having been around this long and played with as many people as I have and seen as many games published as I have, what's fascinating is that the game group can be playing in the way I describe, but they can't bring themselves to write the game honestly. And they write it in this weird, bland, please everybody kind of way that actually accomplishes nothing.